What's going on YouTube? Cloverbell's here, and we are finally back with another Scarlet Violet video. And today we're going to be looking at the Bologna event that just concluded, a couple hours ago. So, we are finally back. May was quite the month work-wise. Things happen, and you have to prioritize certain things when and it comes down to it. But finally, the worst is over. We are finally back to looking at Pokemon. We're finally back to playing Pokemon. That doesn't mean we did not know what was happening, over the past week and a half or so, or, just throughout the month of May. It was just a little bit slow, and we had to play catch up a little bit. But finally, we're here, and we have some things to talk about, with this tour here. So, unfortunately, LabMouse doesn't have everything up just yet. So, at the very least, we can still look at Poke data and still analyze things, slowly. But we can always discuss the cores and usage rates, even without Poke data and whatnot, because those are always bits and pieces of the story as far as like what the meta looks like right now. And what was interesting for this is could we see a carryover from the May Victory Road Challenge as well as Portland and whatnot. So because those were like about a week ago before this happened, right? So it's important to note that and see if there was in fact a carryover, or were there some adjustments being made to certain cores here. But this was the Calyrex Shadow Rider Zamazenta regional or event, or whatever you want to call it, because as you look here, there were 5 Calyrex Shadow Rider Zamazenta teams. It was only a matter of time before this duo put its stamp on within the meta. This was the duo that was supposed to be the top restricted duo when the format was announced, but it took some time to get its footing. It was a lot of hype with Lunalas and Miraidons and Ho-Ohs and Calyrex Ice Riders. But finally, the secret is out, and now finally Zamazenta and CSR have their builds, which has carried them, to a lot of success, within these last couple of weeks or so. Because if you did look at the VR tournament as well as Portland, there were some teams there that you do get to see here, and that's telling, right? Because it means they're very consistent, and the results are repeatable, which is often very, very good if you're trying to pick up a certain team for a certain tournament or something for ladder and whatnot, right? Because now we're heading into the second month of regulationI, which is June. Okay, and again, this is all building up to NAIC and of course eventually the World Championships, which is again having the format for a dual restricted competition, right? So anyway, we'll look at usage rates. We'll look at for both the restricteds and the non-restricteds, and then we'll look at the cores here, as well as like some other niche ideas that also did relatively well here. But anyway, without further ado, let's go ahead and let's look at the usage rates. So looking at day 1 in terms of the restricted pair usage, so look at number 1 here at 15.8%. That is the Calyrex Shadow Rider Zamazenta duo. Again, we mentioned that just a moment ago. There were 5 of them in the top 8, and no surprise here to see them at a high usage within the day 1 results here. And then after that, then you get Miraidon and the Calyrex Ice Rider, followed by the Miraidon and Lunala pairing. Now, normally before this, you would find these two within 1 and 2, and then the CSR Zamazenta would be at number 3, for example. But now we get a little bit of a flip just because of a little bit more meta development from where we are right now. And then after that, then you still get the Koraidon Calyrex Shadow Rider at number 4 over there. So honestly, these are still the same 4 that we saw, in previous regionals, but now we just get a different order of placement. Okay, and then as we look into day 2, even a little bit more interesting, right? But again, now look at the usage here, 26% from 15.8%, right, for CSR and Zamazenta. That is quite the conversion rate there. And then Lunala and Miraidon there at 18.8%. And then a bit of a dip there in the Miraidon Calyrex Ice Rider duo there, going down to 4th at 10.4%. But 26% is quite the jump, okay, to note that. And, what it really comes down to is the cores surrounding these two, okay? We knew these two itself were, like, good, but it's how you build around them that makes all the difference, right? And there's a few ways to do it, and we did see some variants, obviously, but the key here, I think, in my opinion, was the Raging Bolters, right? So you're going to see this from some of those teams, but you can easily just start out like this, right? You have the Calyrex Shadow Rider, then you have the Zamazenta duo. By the way, home showdown, okay? Sprites there that, that's been around for about a week now. And then you just add Raging Bolt here. okay? And now you can just build around these three, right? And then from here, you can do stuff like, you know, Amoonguss for your Trick Room matchup. You can add the Chenpao here for, you know, just a little bit more damage, you know, physically, you know, with your Zamazenta. You get a little bit of Bolt Beam coverage from here. And then this last slot can be a lot of different things. You know, we've seen some stuff like Incineroar. We've seen some stuff like Rillaboom, you know, just going for the double grass idea with Amoonguss over here. A little bit more terrain control for your Miraidon matchup. We've even seen Tinglu over here, and some of the Tinglu sets are a little bit different depending on how you want to play it. But usually this is something like an Assault Vest set here with Snarl, right? And Runation. Okay, and again, Runation, really, really good move just because, again, you can break Shadow Shield on Lunala, and then you can deal, you know, meaningful damage to put things in range for your Calyrex to start picking up KOs with Astro Barrage, right? You know, you might think this is a little bit, you know, counterintuitive just because, you know, Tinglu might reduce the damage, you know, from something like a Shadow Rider, but it all still is fine just because, you know, the power that you have from the rest of the team. And then also just like Tinglu and Zamazenta as a core, as a duo, is also like really, really strong because, again, you're getting the defense boost from your Dauntless Shield. Now you reduce special attack damage, you know, when you combine things with Tinglu. And now all you can do here is just deal a bunch of chip damage, you know, with these guys, you know, especially here with Raging Bolt, and then let them do their early damage, and then Calyrex just comes in the back and, you know, cleans things up here, right? So you can just honestly do stuff like this, right? Where you can, again, this is somewhat the Amoonguss over here, right? But again, it just depends on how you want to build the idea. We can even see sometimes the Ogerpon usage here. You might even see like the Heart Flame or the Cornerstone for that matter. And then, you know, instead of the Amoonguss, then we'll get something like the Incineroar for that matter. You can still play like this, right? You know, where you can sacrifice the Mushroom a little bit. But so many different ways to play, you know, this kind of duo now. And you can still do the hyper offensive build with something like Whimsicott here, right? And you can go with, you know, double, you know, with the Tailwind stuff. You can even go like Fake Tears here, you know, with the Calyrex and Raging Bolt here. They're both going to benefit from something like this. And then you can even just go for Light Screen over here, for example. But, you know, if you want to go the Tailwind route, it's still possible. It's just not as common as some of the more balanced ideas that we're starting to see with the CSR Zamazenta stuff. But I do think Raging Bolt just kind of like puts it all together a little bit, just because, you know, you have access to stuff like the Thunderclap priority. Okay, you know, it helps against the Terra Waters that are running around, like a Lunala, for example, or even like Urshifu, for example. Then you still have access to stuff like, you know, Electro Web if you go with the Assault Vest variant. Otherwise, you know, you can still see yourself going for booster energy stuff and just getting a special attack boost. Also really good, you know, within your Miraidon, Koraidon stuff, just because, again, you can get the boost thanks to photosynthesis and electric terrain. Just makes your attacks do a little bit more damage, right? So, and then whether you are or not you go with Draco Meteor or Dragon Pulse is up to you, but either way, something like this is looking quite nice there. And this is also going to give you a decent Kyogre matchup as well, right? You know, in addition to the Wygor support from Zamazenta, right? So anyway, that's what we're looking at here in terms of the CSR Zam cores, right? And we'll talk more about that as we look at the cores, but that just gave you an idea of what's to come and what is pretty good right now here. The Lunala Miraidon stuff is still like relatively straightforward, right? You know, you'll still get stuff like Grimmsnarl and Iron Hands coming in and doing the job there. And then from there, you know, maybe you get Whimsicott in the game, maybe you don't. Otherwise, you know, you're just really centered around using the Lunala as a support option, with maybe even the Ursaluna added to this duo here. And you'll probably also see some of that as well, you know, with the Calyrex Ice Rider Miraidon teams. They'll also go with Grimmsnarl, maybe another Ogerpon there, and then you might also see like an Ursaluna in that sense, right? But to each their own. The CSR Calyrex ideas, again, this is all about supporting with the photosynthesis stuff. So stuff like Raging Bolt is also pretty good there as well. But even then, Fluttermane and Chio are always going to be like staples, you know, with this kind of duo there. And not much has really changed here, unless you go with the Dondozo idea with Galarian Weezing, right? So that will also be a factor, you know, because again, not too many checks are happening right now with Dondozo. There's no Clear Smog Amoonguss yet. Okay, there's not too many Pokemon running around with Haze. So the Dondozo stuff, you know, with these guys are still like looking pretty good here. Anyway, let's look at the non-restrictors and let's see what kind of percentages those things look like. So looking at day one here, no real surprises here. You know, Incineroar, Urshifu, and Rillaboom over here. Rillaboom back to being number 3 here, going back up to 28% there. Grimmsnarl still within the top 6 here, 22%. Iron Hands also still relatively strong. Good on those Miraidon teams. And Amoonguss, you know, finding its way back into the top 6 there, despite being you know, in a Miraidon heavy format here. Ursaluna, of course, we know how good this thing is right now. It's acting like another restricted just because of the Lunala combos with Wide Guard, Earthquake. And then the Chiyus, of course, are also really good with the Koraidon teams, as well as the Calyrex Shadow Rider teams, as well as like most hyper offensive teams. You know, Snarl is really good. And then you have stuff like Fergaf, Whimsicott here. Sometimes you'll see this, you'll see both on both the Miraidon teams, okay? But again, Fergaf with Foul Play and being able to deny priority, right? Not that Raging Bolt is in the meta. You probably get a little bit more value out of Fergaf there just to be able to deny Thunderclap. Then Chien-Pao, Tornadus round things up here. So once again, still the Tailwind Prankster Mons are still falling behind the defensive Prankster Pokemon, which is Grimmsnarl. So the Grimm is still looking relatively strong. And then if you look at day 2, look at this. How about Raging Bolt? You know, shooting itself up into the top 6 here. This thing was not even in the top 12. Now all of a sudden you're practically doubling its percentages here, and that's because of the Calyrex Shadow Rider Zamazenta teams here. But you're still getting Incin, Urshifu, and Rillaboom. Rillaboom, you know, spiking up now to 35%. Incin also getting a decent bump there, you know, up to 51% usage, and Urshifu still relatively much the same there, only 1% difference. But look at this. This 6 right here can form a core for a lot of different teams here. All you have to do is just, you know, plug in a restrictor or 2, and then you're kind of good there. But then Grimmsnarl dipping, that's quite a drop there, you know, from 22 to 14% there. And, you know, in a format where there's Urshifu and whatnot, and, you know, Taunt is available, non-Prankster Taunt, of course. That's also going to be very valuable at the same time here. You still get Ursaluna there, but again, you know, now at the trailer end of 13.5%, but you know, still pretty close to where it was in day 1, just in terms of the number-wise percentage. The Ogerpon Heartflame found its way in there, right? And then after this, you're still getting Iron Hands, Chien-Pao, and whatnot. So honestly, the highlight of this was the rise of Raging Bolt here and the dip in the Grimmsnarl, in honesty, and also a little bit of a dip in the Iron Hands, right, from 23 to about 18%. But welcome back, Raging Bolt here, and you know, there comes an argument now, like, you know, which one is like kind of better right now? Is it going to be the Iron Hands? Is it going to be the Raging Bolt? It really depends on your team. Pros and cons to both, obviously, because they both offer different tools for your team. You know, one can give you Fake Out, one can give you a better Trick Room matchup, one gives you a priority move, one gives you a bulky special attacker with some speed control, you know, with Electro Web for that matter. But it really just depends, and you have to evaluate what your team needs as far as like which one would fit your team a little bit more, right? So in terms of team building, you know, either or it can go relatively well. And it's, you know, sometimes you don't really want to read too much in terms of like the percentages, because they don't tell you like the whole story. You really have to look at the cores and see where they are just in terms of the results. This just gives you like an overall scope from everyone, you know, that made day 2, which is still good information to have. But again, don't just only look at the percentages. This is like on the outside, but if you want to look more on the inside, that's where you have to really, you know, break down the course, as we've always been doing, you know, throughout the years of VGC here. Okay, so let's see some of these Raging Bolt teams, you know, as we look at the cores. So let's go back into Pokédata and let's look at the top 8. All right, so now let's look at the top 8. So of course the winner was Matteo, and it was almost a mirror matchup, you know, with Ruben over here. 2 very, very good Italian players. You know, again, you're just building off of this core that I mentioned earlier with the Zamazenta, Calyrex, Raging Bolt there, with the Amoonguss, and then Chien-Pao. And then from here, it really just depends on, you know, your last 6. You can have a couple of options there. This one going with the Incineroar, and then this one over here going with the Rillaboom. It really just depends. But also the item on the Calyrex versus Chien-Pao is also going to matter here, right? One could get a Life Orb, one could get a Sash, one could get, you know, something else besides the Life Orb. It really just depends, but it's all like a personal preference and a playstyle, obviously, because everything will work depending on how you want to play it. But let's look at Matteo's team here. So first of all, it is going to be a Life Orb Calyrex with Nasty Plot there. You have Incineroar and Amoonguss for your defensive backbone, you know, with Intimidate, Fake Out, and Redirection. And then the Chien-Pao here with Taunt, you know, giving up the fighting move here. I like that a lot just because a fast non-prankster taunt can go a long way. Zamazenta here, you know, with a standard set with, you know, body press, heavy slam, and wide guard. Terra Dragon's really good. Just being able to resist certain things, you know, like a fire type attack, for example. The Raging Bolt here is a magnet set, you know, with protect, so Bolt, Pulse, and Thunderclap. Pretty standard set there. The Instant is AV, by the way, you know, with U-turn rather than Parting Shot. You know, just a little bit of chip damage that you can get out with U-turn, Break, Sash, and then have a little bit more special defense, especially against Miraidon, for example. There's no Grimmsnarl here, so definitely much appreciated, and it's really useful against, you know, Meteor Beam Lunala, for example, right? So Assault Vest Edson could start to pick up a little bit more as the format progresses. By the way, AV Instant can actually live Kyogre Water Attack, so, you know, just stay tuned for that. But anyway, the Amoonguss' Rocky Helmet with Rage Powder, Spore, Pollen Puff, and Protect. Again, there is no Clear Smog, so again, if you want to run Dondozo, it is still definitely within the cards. If you look at Ruben's team over here, this one is a Life Orb Chien-Pao set, whereas the Calyrex here is a Sash. If you looked at, you know, version 1 here from Matteo, it was the Life Orb Calyrex and the Sash Chien-Pao. This time we get a little bit of a flip. That's why I've been saying, you know, sometimes it just really depends on how you want to play the team. But we're going to go a little bit more aggressive with the Chien-Pao here with Crash and Sucker Punch. And Rillaboom is going to have the AV instead. And then, you know, Amoonguss with Sludge Bomb here with still the Rocky Helmet set. It's Terra Water Zamazenta with Body Press. It's the same set there. Same thing with Raging Bolt here with the Magnet, Bolt, Clap, and Meteor. Right? If you look at the first one, this one was Pulse from Matteo, but Ruben is saying, you know, I prefer Meteor. So nice little mirror that we're getting from both of these teams. And this is Encore and Psychic Calyrex, whereas this one was Life Orb Astral Barrage. So these are, you know, pretty good variants of the Calyrex Shadow Rider Zamazenta teams. We have a couple more to show you, but as we move down the list here, let's look at Theotime, right? French players. So look at this Miraidon Lunala screens, you know, pretty standard there. But again, this is like double terrain, you know, with Rillaboom involved here. This is the Calm Mind set with Lunala here. We've seen this before from previous regionals. So if you want to override your own Miraidon terrain with Rillaboom, I guess you can do that to help your Lunala set up the Calm Minds with Leftovers, Protect, Recovery. So that still works and it's still strong, right? Obviously, third place 13-2 looks really good. And then you have the screen support. So this way, you know, you can enable yourself to be able to set up these Calm Minds, just because, you know, you might have to take some damage the turn that you do set it up, but Grimmsnarl can mitigate all of that thanks to the screen support over here, right? And you have the double fake out, you have the screens, you have the redirection, so you have all the tools that you have to be able to set up this Calm Mind. And Miraidon here with the Choice Scarf, again, you know, just you know, it's great into the mirror matchup, and when you can snarl things and snarl the other Miraidon first, just to make sure that it doesn't do as much damage, or outspeed a Shadow Rider and snarl them first, it's very, very good. Okay, you're gonna sacrifice some damage, but you know, Miraidon already just does enough damage, you know, with Electro Drift and Terra. You know, that's also why you have Terra Electric there, you know, just to compensate for the lack of specs, because you have the Scarf for the speed, but if you need the damage, you can always just go Terra Electric, and, you know, that kind of acts like your choice specs in that regard there, right? So I think it works out relatively well. How about Lorenzo here, relying on the power of Clefairy here with the Friend Guard support? You know, follow me. It means probably a little bit of bulk on this Calyrex, right? Just because you have Nasty Plot here. But there's the Raging Bolt yet again. No Chien-Pao on this one, but you still get the Fake Out Boys with Instant and Rillaboom there. So pretty standard team if you ask me. Then over here, Max Musumesi. I hope I'm saying that right. But another variant here, but again, still building off of this Calyrex Zamazenta Raging Bolt Chien-Pao core. No Amoonguss here. Instead, we're getting Ogerpon, and then we get Whimsicott here with Moonblast, Tailwind, Fake Tears, like we said earlier. So again, Fake Tears really helping the Shadow Rider start picking up KOs. And your Trick Room matchup gets help, you know, just because you can always do substitute on your Calyrex Shadow. I like that a lot. I think you have to go that route if you don't have the Amoonguss here. So it just makes sense here. And Taunt Chien-Pao looks really good. Again, non-prankster Taunt. Then over here, Francesco. Building off of Sinistra here. So this is Pagos, Miraidon, Sinistra. So again, with Terapagos, you know, you can have the healing capabilities of Sinistra. which is really nice. It keeps you healthy. You can set up your Calm Minds a little bit easier. How about Electric Seed Terapagos with Miraidon, getting that defense boost, okay, along with the special defense boost with Calm Mind there. So I like that a lot, okay, just because that can help you survive the body press stuff from Zamazenta a little bit more, and helps you a little bit in terms of freeing up some of your EVs, which is nice. You still have Iron Treads here for big damage in the terrain, and then Iron Valiant, obviously also another Core Drive mod that can get the boost. And now you have fast disables here, which is kind of annoying. So that's really, really smart there from Francesco, using this Iron Valiant for a little bit more support. Then you have Spirit Break too, also really powerful against, you know, other Miraidons, Lunalas, and Calyrex Shadow Riders. And Instant and Sinister just here for like defensive backbone purposes. Then Stefano over here, yet another variant. Again, same idea. This time, you know, with Raging Bolt, Zom, and Calyrex, we get Instant Rillaboom and Ogerpon. So we're getting like full balance idea here. You know, double fake out a redirection mod here with the Ogerpon. It's still Boost Energy, Raging Bolt. It's still Terra Dragon, Zamazenta, and it's still Life Orb, Calyrex. So no surprises there. Adam here is still using a Choice Scarf Miraidon idea with Lunala. Again, the Calm Mind with the Rillaboom, except we don't have screens here. We still have Instant and Rillaboom, but instead of going with the screens idea, we do have the Sash Urshifu and the Tailwind Volcarona. So this Tailwind Volcarona with Will-O-Wisp as well with Rage Powder, it's basically full support here, which is really, really cool. Again, you can always play Volcarona, you know, two ways, a little bit more offensive with Quiver Dance, or you can play it a little bit more supportive, you know, with this Rocky Helmet, Will-O-Wisp Tailwind set, and Redirection here with Rage Powder. The occasional Fiery Dance, you know, you can boost up your special attack that way. This is a team we've seen before in, you know, previous regionals, so nice to see a little bit of carryover here. And then finally, oh no, that actually was our top 8. You know, I lost track over there. So again, 5 CSR Zamazenta teams over there. So very interesting. Okay, and you know, even outside of the top 8, there were still other very good Calyrex Shadow Rider Zamazenta teams, for example, right? You know, just you just have to look a little bit, right? Like even this one here at 11th place is still within the grasp here, and then over here at 10th place, same thing. Look at the takeover for Calyrex Shadow Rider Zamazenta teams. Like this one has the Amoonguss and Rillaboom. We've seen this before. Covert Cloak Incineroar here rather than AV, just because you have the Rillaboom too, so the Rillaboom is going to get the AV. And then over here with the Ogerpon Heartflame, because again the Rillaboom is here, the AV will stay here, the Rocky Helmet can be on the instant, and then Ogerpon here is just kind of chilling there, just being able to support. So yeah, it's really cool just to see, you know, the takeover from CSR Zamazenta. You know, there was a lot of hype, you know, just with Miraidon Lunala stuff, and you know the the Calyrexes and the Kyogres now, also the Calyrexes and the Miraidon. So now this format really is up for grabs right now. It's still very new, still very recent. People are still experimenting and trying different things, right? You know, you don't even, like in this top 8, you don't even see a single Ice Rider, right? Where's the Leech Seed Calyrex Ice Rider teams? Okay, you have to scroll down a little bit to find them, but they're around. Okay, so here, how about this one? Yeah, but this one isn't even running Leech Seed. So yeah, this again, it just really depends on how you want to play the team. But again, we'll look at those teams in a second. But nice to see the return of CSR Zom Balance. Okay, so I kind of want to look at some of the Ice Rider teams, and there weren't as many in this regional as opposed to some of the other ones in the past. I guess that's just a little bit more meta development, or like, you know, time and place and kind of thing, but there was still some. Okay, so the highest placing one here was 13th place here from Santiago, and it was kind of the one that we just previewed already with the Miraidon Iron Hands Ferrograph core there. So you can easily just slap on Ice Rider here, and that's like already a strong 4 Pokemon core. And then the last 2 slots, it really just depends on you. They've opted to go with the Iron Treads and the Incineroar here, so you know, you get a nice aggressive ground type with Cork Drive here with Miraidon, which is great into the mirror matchup, and then Instant with Ferrograph and Iron Hands just gives you like that solid, strong defensive backbone here that can help you support and enable the Calyrex Ice Rider in the Trick Room mode, right? So that's one idea. Okay, otherwise, if you scroll down a little bit, the other idea is to play with Kyogre, and that's like one of the hotter new things right now in the given meta, where you can just play like Kyogre, Ice Rider, and Amoonguss. And then from there, you know, the options can vary, but obviously, you know, with something like Urshifu, really strong with Kyogre, Then you have Iron Jugulus here as your Dark type Tailwind user as opposed to the Roaring Moon. But again, Hurricane, 100% accurate in the range. Snarl is really strong. And with Booster Energy, you get a nice little speed boost, so you outspeed everything first without necessarily needing Tailwind, right? So you can definitely opt this way. So either way, you know, Ice Rider looks like it very much enjoys Miraidon still, but you can also partner it with Kyogre, again, because the Rain will take away the Fire weakness at the very least from the Ice Rider, which is really nice when you think about it. And then the Ice Rider, you know, just kind of helps deal with Kyogre's weaknesses. So imagine like Raging Bolt and Rillabooms. The Ice Rider, you know, kind of eats that for lunch because of the ice weaknesses, right? So they go with each other relatively well. Okay, then as you scroll down, and if you look at, you know, 35th place over here is what I saw from my notes here. Yeah, so you can even do this one. This is another you know, Miraidon variant, the Rain variant with Pelipper here. So the cool thing with Pelipper is, look, if you add Calyrex and Miraidon as opposed to something like Lunala, there's no Wide Guard, but you can still get access to it if you add Pelipper here. So now you get Weather Control, and you get Wide Guard support, you know, coming from a Pelipper here, and then you still get the Iron Hands, you know, and Ogerpon to help you with your Miraidon cores, right? Then you throw in Smeargle here, which is actually kind of interesting. You know, Spore is going to be a little bit tricky to play, you know, when you have Miraidon here, but of course, it's still going to be very much doable here. But again, Fake Out, Follow Me, Spiko Shield, and Spore, really strong idea there. And then everything else is just honestly relatively standard. No Leech Seed Calyrex just yet. It was Discharge Miraidon, so I will note that. But then as you scroll down a little bit more here to 40th from Nikita, this one is a little bit of a unique one. This is a Calyrex Ice Rider Ho-Oh idea, right? And this is with Overquill with Intimidate, okay? Barb Barrage, Throat Chop, and Toxic Spikes. Oh my goodness, that's a set there. Then you've got Ursaluna, which of course still has pretty good synergy with Ho-Oh. Then you've got Rillaboom and Ogerpon, you know, for your Fake Out and Redirection needs to help you enable and, you know, set up the Trick Room on the Calyrex. This one is the Leech Seed variant. So this is a pretty interesting team, you know, and the congrats to Nikita. You know, again, 8-3, very solid result there. And then if you go down here, this is another Rain variant. Again, a little bit more standard with Tornadus, Ursh, and Amoonguss here. Nothing else really needs to be said. This is Seed Bomb Calyrex, by the way, which gets boosted in grassy terrain, I will add. Okay, so I do respect that idea. And notice how this Tornadus has Hurricane rather than Bleak Wind. Again, now we're in a format with so much Wide Guard that these Tornaduses now are opting for a little bit more Hurricane as opposed to Bleak Wind. So this way they don't get completely walled out, right? Because usually these Tornaduses only have one damaging attack, and that's Bleak Wind Storm. But if the opponent has a Wide Guard user, then you don't even get to attack, right? You just have 3 support moves there, and sometimes you really need damage. So this way, to get around it, you just get Hurricane, and you still get 100% accuracy in the range. So a little bit of meta development there for you. Okay, then there's one over here. This one is also an Ice Rider Miraidon team, but this one is Screens with Incineroar here, and then you have a different ground type. Instead of Ursaluna, we have the Landorus incarnate form, you know, life orb support. And what's really cool about Landorus, like I always say, you are 1 point faster than a Chi-Yu, which is great. Now, granted, they do have Scarf, of course, so they'll probably outspeed you regardless. But at the very least, Landorus is still like a pretty good ground type to use, a special attacking ground type that won't suffer from Intimidate cycling from Incineroar, and you can pressure the Incineroars right back with something like Earth Power, okay? And then this one with Taunt is actually pretty cool because normally you would see something like Bleak Wind Storm here, but now how about a Taunt user that is decently fast, okay? And you have the banned Urshifu rather than Mystic Water, and then you still have Leech Seed Calyrex here, which can do well with screens in the endgame scenario there. So again, still like pretty cool. Then a couple of other ones here in the 50s, still also 8-3 from manual. This is like completely hard Trick Room where you're just going with like Indeedee, Lunala, Calyrex, Torkoal, right? And you know what you're gonna do when you're getting that. So, you know, you set up Trick Room, you let them kill the Indeedee, you bring in the Torkoal, you click Eruption, Glacial Lance, you click Eruption, you know, Expanding Force. Pretty linear, pretty standard team, but again, can get the job done as we see here, you know, with 8-3 result. It was the last 8-3 team. And then, of course, this Miracle, you can go with Decorate because there is no Miraidon gonna interfere with that regard, right? So you can, so the hard Trick Room idea with Ice Rider still works, okay? There's only one there, but at least you do get some data in that sense, right? Then if you go down here, this one has the Ursaluna idea, right? So instead of Landorus, we go with the Ursaluna. Now, you don't have Wide Guard or Lunala here, but that's okay. You still have everything else you need to be able to do what you want. And again, Leech Seed Calyrex here. So this still works if you want to go with the Ursaluna rather than Landorus. But, you know, that was more or less it, right? Because other than that, those were the main ideas that you want to do with Calyrex Ice Rider right now. But I was scrolling down and that was really it as far as like all I could find. Perhaps I missed the icons, but from what I was finding and from what my mouse was hovering over, that was it. Because after that, we just get a couple 6/5s and none of those are Ice Rider teams besides this one over here, which we've already previewed. So very interesting, right? So again, you still have your Miraidon idea with screens. Otherwise, you can definitely capitalize on the Kyogre hype right now and build towards that. Next up, I want to spotlight this Koraidon Calyrex Shadow Rider pairing. So this has been a relatively successful duo up until this point. But now the adaptation here is that we're adding the G-Weezing onto this, and this has been very successful. You know, within the Victory Road tournament last weekend, and even Portland, because this is now your core of your team. Because now with Weezing, you get to keep your ability, right? Because you have the ability shield, right, on your Koraidon. So you get weather control. The opponent does not. So you shut down Prankster. You shut down their weather, which is really nice, you know, if you are a Koraidon player. So this way you don't really have to worry about rain so much. And then at the same time, you know, you have your Calyrex, so you can also just deny berries altogether, right? But then from here, you'll add the Chi-Yu here, which again, you know, benefits from both here because again, extra fire damage in the sun, and then you're, you know, dropping Spadefs because of Bees of Ruin, so your Calyrex is now hitting a little bit harder. And then from here, you can take the team a couple of directions. You know, we've commonly seen Brute Bonnet in this slot here. Okay, again, just another photosynthesis mon that can do relatively well in the sun. You know, Rage Powder, Spore, of course, you know what you're getting there. We have also seen a little bit more Jump Pluff in that slot, you know, in that grass type slot. So again, with Chlorophyll, you know, super fast, you know, Sleep Powders and Tailwinds. You know, we've seen the Jump Pluff idea before, you know, on some teams, of course. And then from here, you know, a couple of other moves that you can suggest. You know, you can even have stuff like Encore and whatnot. And then you can also technically add like an Iron Hands over here. This is also like a really, really good Pokemon to have. Just again, fake out pressure, really super bulky, helps you against like Ice Rider matchups for that matter. So lots of different directions where you can take this, you know, but at the very least, this is your key for the Shadow Rider Weezing kind of duo, right? And if we look at Bologna, we saw a lot of this, right? You know, and there's plenty of these throughout. So let's just go through like a couple of examples here. So right over here, yeah, here's the first one, right? You know, so Francesco over here, Italian VGC player. Look at that. Chi-Yu, Koraidon, Weezing, Shadow Rider, and then Raging Bolt, another photosynthesis mon, and then going for the Amoonguss instead. So Grass, not Rage Powder, and Spore. Again, relatively standard Amoonguss set there. But again, this is just one other variation that you can definitely consider. I don't think I missed one previously right now. And then as you keep going down, you'll see like a bunch more, right? Like this one over here from Matteo, this one, another Matteo. This one is Brute Bonnet instead, rather than the Amoonguss. So yeah, Brute Bonnet and Raging Bolt. And again, you know, just standard set from Brute Bonnet. Also AV Raging Bolt with Electro Web. Good speed control there. Okay. It's a Sash Calyrex Shadow Rider. And then if you go down, you'll run into like other variations of this, but more or less the same kind of build here. Yeah, see, like this is more or less the same stuff. Sometimes you'll run like Taunt, Will-O-Wisp, Strange Theme. You might even have like the Poison Gas variant on these Weezings just to deal like extra chip damage, put things in range for Calyrex to clean up in the endgame. This is the Jump Pluff variant, right? So Sleep Powder, Tailwind, Encore, Rage Powder. So you get Redirection, you get Status, you get Speed Control, all in one with the Jump Pluff over here. So you can definitely go with something like this. And there is the Iron Hands variation. So if you want to play the team like this, you can definitely do that. It's just a personal preference in terms of the playstyle. But again, very successful ideas. Again, just centralizing around those key four here. See, here's another one, right? Another Jump Pluff variation, right? This is Imprison Calyrex, by the way. So they hate the mirror, right? This is Gong Shot Weezing, right? Instead of the Strange Steam or like, Dazzling Gleam idea, but more or less the same concept. Here's another one, right? Look at all the Jump Left variations here, but again, To each their own. It really just depends what you want to do with it. I think I can find a couple more here. Now we're going down into the 7 force, but it was actually just a really successful duel. This one is the Walking Wake variation. I think we saw this in the previous region as well. This one is Walking Wake with Snarl, right? So you can definitely play it like that if you really want to. So instead, forgoing the grass type there with the Brute Bonnet or the Jump Bluff, and instead going with the Walking Wake. We've seen that before already. So again, lots of options, but it's still a very successful archetype, and I think this will definitely carry over into NAIC. Okay, how about a little bit more about Lunala and Miraidon here? So there's a couple of ways that you can play this, and there's two main ways that are like popular right now, and that's the Calm Mind variant and then the non-Calm Mind variant. So if you're gonna go the Calm Mind variant, right? So that means you're gonna have like leftovers, Calm Mind and Protect on this. Okay, and typically when you have like a setup Pokemon with Calm Mind and leftovers, you want your grassy terrain with you. So this is where you add the second terrain in Rillaboom, and then a little bit more support with Incineroar. So double Fake Out to help enable the Calm Mind set, right? So you'll probably play it this in some shape or form if you want to play it in that sense, right? And have the Miraidon be like the instant offense mon, or you don't have to play this way, okay? If you don't, but still want to use these two, then you don't have to do the Calm Mind variant. You can go a little bit more standard, right? And still go with the Wide Guard Protect set, okay? And then from here, what you can do is just go with like the Ursaluna set, right? So like this is where like this type of Pokemon really thrives here, because again, Wide Guard along with the Earthquake combination, okay, really good because you stop other spread moves, you don't take a damage from your own spread move, and you deal damage right back. So it's like 3-in-1 here. And then to be able to just support this, you need your defensive backbone, with Incineroar and Grimmsnarl, okay? And then this last slot, can be up for grabs. You don't even necessarily need the Grimmsnarl here. You actually can go a little bit faster, and you can go with something like Whimsicott over here, and then you can add something like an Urshifu, right? And then same idea, right? So like if you don't want to go with the Whimsicott, if you want to play it a little bit slower, you can definitely do that, and you can just do like, Grimmsnarl here, and then Urshifu to like round things out here. Sometimes you'll even see like the Ogerpon Heartflame in this sense, but it really just depends. But those are like the two main play styles here. So like either you go like the non-Calm Mind variant, or you go with the Calm Mind variant. So if you go up here from the regional results, so if we start with a few, like you've already seen like a couple in the top 8, right? So like for example, in the third place team, we went over it already. This is the Scarlet variant with like Calm Mind, Lunala, and then you have Grimmsnarl, Instant Screens, and then you round it out here with not even the Ursula. You could go like Rillaboom and Ogerpon. So like that's totally fine, right? But then if you scroll further down, you'll see like these other ideas, right? So like look at Federico Camporesi's build here. So you're going with Incin, Urshifu, and Whimsicott instead of the Grimmsnarl, and you still have the Ursaluna. So this is one way to really do it. Again, Wide Guard, Trick Room idea. So yeah, it just works, right? It's consistent and solid. And by the way, this Incin is the AV set. We've seen this build before, okay? Then as you keep scrolling down, you'll see like some other ideas. So look at this here from 26th place. I think this is more or less the same team, right? Yeah, okay, so there we go. Luca Cherubelli, same idea. But there's a few other ones like this one. This one is another Calm Mind variant, right? And then still Choice Card, but this is the Volcarona here with Tailwind. Okay, Rage Powder, Fire Dance, Willows, Protect, right? So like again, support Volk, able to come in and help out, with both of these. So you can definitely do that. And here's the Urshifu, right? So that's another way. This one, still the same idea. Again, with Whimsicott, AV Incin. Then as we keep going down, this one doesn't even use the Whimsicott. Instead, we're going with the Grimmsnarl, and we're still going with the Scarf. This is the one of the teams that we saw earlier from third place. Okay, this one has Incin, Urshifu, and Rillaboom, and Volcarona with Covert Cloak. So not a Tailwind set, not a Will-O-Wisp set, but look at this Fiery Dance, Struggle Bug, and Quiver Dance set. So you can definitely go with something like that if that's something that you're a little bit more interested in. Otherwise, if you keep going down here, yeah, this is still like more on this. You see, it's a very popular build to try and use. Same thing over here. Like you see how they all follow each other, 8-3. So like this Lunala Miraidon combination, it's still looking very strong right now. One of the A-tier ideas, in my opinion, from what if I had to rate it, this is what I would do. See, like again, more stuff here. So like Incin, AV goes on the Rillaboom because you're running the Rillaboom, so no longer needing the AV on the Incin. And again, that's that same Volcarona set that we previewed earlier. Okay. If we can, just find one more over here, and then that would be great. Yeah, here again, this one, Grimmsnarl variation rather than Whimsicott. This is the AV Miraidon set with Snarl. Okay, so a little bit less damage, but you have the band on the Urshifu, so you can definitely explore that idea. Rocky Helmet Incin, okay, and again, screens with Thunder Wave, Spirit Break on the Grimmsnarl. So again, you have a few ideas. So again, Calm Mind or no Calm Mind. If you don't do Calm Mind, totally fine. You still have ideas with the Ursaluna if you really want to. Otherwise, you don't have to necessarily go the Ursaluna route. You can go like complete balance, with Incin, Rillaboom, Ogerpons, and Urshifus. All right, a little bit about Miraidon and Calyrex Ice Rider. So I know we previewed a lot of the Ice Rider teams earlier, but these two are still like very, very strong, and you can play them relatively standard, but there were some interesting builds that we saw from Bologna. But again, like some of the more standard stuff, you can always start like this with Farigiraf and Iron Hands, because this type of core is going to be good whether you have an Ice Rider team or if you have a Miraidon team. So of course the Miraidon core with Farigiraf and Iron Hands, this dates back even before the dual restricted format. Then still the same thing, you still have Iron Hands and Farigiraf and Calyrex Ice Rider. So again, an alternate Trick Room setter and then a Fake Out user that can also abuse the Trick Room. That's also has been strong, with the Ice Rider in itself, right? And the electric coverage just helps you deal with something like Kyogre, for example, which Calyrex Ice Rider has a hard time beating. Then from here, you can take the team a couple of directions. You can always go with something like, Urshifu over here, and then have something like an Ogerpon Heart Flame. So this way you have a Fire, Water, Grass core. Okay, you can definitely do something easily like that. Or you can go, a little bit more on the special side and add a Chiyu over here. Okay, and then this last slot can be something else. You could even put in like, I don't know, it's still the Urshifu, right? So that also works. That's a dark one, by the way. But actually, it also works too. So you can still definitely get away with a lot, with this core. Or you can go a different direction. And again, like I said before, go with the Ursaluna core, right? Where you have this Pokemon. Okay, and then you have still something like the Grimmsnarl screens idea, with Miraidon and the Calyrex Ice Rider, and then some kind of fake out Pokemon, something like Incineroar, right? So Incin, Grimmsnarl, defensive backbone, again, fake out Trick Room, parting shot into Ursaluna, and then start going bonkers, with Glacial Lance and Facade, for example. You can definitely still play this way, and then you don't even necessarily need this Ursula. You can even go like the Landorus, just for like your alternate ground type over here. And then at the same time, you can still add the Urshifu if you really want to. So lots of different ways to really mix and match, but I still think, Grimmsnarl and Incin are really good, with this kind of core, if you don't want to go with like the Farigiraf Iron Hands variant. But that being said, I still think we saw like different ideas here. No, over here. Yeah, so like if we scroll up a little bit, I saw some builds that were like, oh, okay, this is kind of cute. Go down here to 44th place over here. Look at this. We have the Glamora variant with Dondozo. Remember Glamora Dozo stuff back in like non-restricted, how oppressive that was with stuff like Talonflame and Gholdengo? Well, that comes back here a little bit. And this is like, again, just doing a bunch of chip damage, putting things in range for Dondozo to clean up. This is Scarf Miraidon with Discharge here. Next to Iron Treads. It's kind of funny when you think about it. But this is one way to, run it. So again, another little off-meta variant for what you will say. I don't think there was one above this. I think this was like oh no, there was one right here. Yeah, I missed it. 29th place over here, A3 result. Again, also still having the Iron Treads, but look at this. Miraidon, Calyrex Ice Rider, Farigiraf, Iron Hands. There's your 4-man core. Then these last 2 slots are up for grabs. So we're going with Iron Treads here. And we're going with Smeargle with Decorate here. So yeah, you can definitely do this. Again, we saw this a little bit earlier. And then if you go a little bit further down, towards the late 50s and 60s, I saw some other squads here that were utilizing both this duo. Yeah, right here. Look at this from Francesco. From Pardini. Yeah, look at this. Grimmsnarl. Again, Glamora yet again. Glamora has been picking up a little bit in usage as of late. And then here's the Electric Seed Volcarona. Again, nice little defense boost. Volcarona also, again, not the greatest in terms of physical defense, but if you add the Electric Seed, it already has a pretty good special defense. So now the Volcarona gets a little bit hard to remove, and then you just have Giga Drain over here with Terra Grass, and you just sit there on the field and keep dealing damage and recovery over time. But this is another way to play it, right? And then this is Sash Glamora, right? So still AV Incin over here, pretty cool. All right, and then right beneath it, 60th plate. Look at this, Torterra. I saw this tweet, right? And then I looked at it, I was like, oh my goodness. Yeah, look at this. Headlong Rush, Woodhammer, Leech Seed, and Protect. This is like some kind of hybrid build with like Calyrex Ice Rider and Ursaluna in one. Something like that, right? Okay. And then still look at this. Iron Hand still serving at the score. The Grimmsnarl, Screen Support, Volcarona. Yeah, this is a pretty cool build from Roman. I respect it. I would like to use it. I don't know if they posted a rental, but if they did, I want to use it. But yeah, again, different ideas that people are exploring with the duo. You know, besides the more standard stuff that I showed you earlier. But I think there's a couple more that I want to show you here. Yeah, Luca. Oh yeah, this one. Yeah, this one's like relatively standard. This is the same thing that I was showing you, right? You know, 6-5 results again, pretty good getting into day 2. You know, Urshifu, Chiyu, Fergaf, Iron Hands. Yeah, very very standard stuff. That's like one of the more standard beginning teams of the format that you would have seen if you saw it earlier. But yeah. So we'll have to see if the Glomora variants along with Dondozo will rise a little bit more, but otherwise the standard variations are still like okay. They just didn't really do that well here this time around. Before we start previewing some of the more interesting teams that we haven't covered already, I just want to do one more pairing here with the Calyrex Ice Rider and the Kyogre. Which again we showed a little bit when we were talking about some of the Ice Rider teams. I think there's a couple ways you can definitely go about this, and really what it comes down to is just like plugging and matching certain staples depending on how you want to play the team. So ideally, I think you can always go with something like Amoonguss over here, and then something like Urshifu Rapid Strike. Again, just it's so good in the rain just because it does so much damage. You can put a scarf on this thing, and you know the damage gets boosted by the rain itself, right? That we know, that's a proven idea. The Calyrex also enjoys the Amoonguss just because, again, Amoonguss looks great in the rain. You remove the fire weakness, and then you also have some support with the Calyrex because you can sport things, right? So I like this, and then from here, I think you can definitely mix and match a couple options here. You can definitely do the screens idea with Grimmsnarl, and then you can also technically do something like with Iron Jugulus / you know, Roaring Moon here, that dark flying slot over here, and then this one has like, you know, Hurricane and Snarl, okay, along with Tailwind support. Okay, and then you probably just have Protect over here with a booster energy, right? I think this is like one idea that you can definitely do, and again, this gives you that you know, that Shadow Rider Lunala matchup, of course, because you have Snarl, you have screens, all right, along with redirection that can help you set up the Calyrex. I think this is one way to definitely explore it. Otherwise, you can definitely do the Rillaboom idea with double grasp with Amoonguss and Fake Out. Although I did look at the Rillaboom side, I was like, maybe. I mean, it does help you with terrain control, okay? And, you know, it's another Spore immunity, you know, to Amoonguss, okay? But I still think there's other options besides the Rillaboom that you can do here. Like, I even think Incin could be, like, just straight up okay here, just because, again, you get a nice little Fire, Water, Grass core here going, you know, with the Amoonguss, Incin, or Urshifu. I think this is also pretty good. You get a Fake Out Mon, too, alongside it, you know, and maybe you don't have the Rillaboom terrain control, but you don't necessarily need it, okay? It helps, but I also think just the backbone with Incin and Amoonguss is also just, like, relatively strong. I think you can definitely get away with some of this stuff, but I do think you do want like some Tailwind idea. If you're gonna run like Kyogre or Urshifu, I do think you need Tailwind on the team, and I think Iron Jugulus can definitely give you that. Besides that, you know, with Amoonguss, I think you need some other defensive backbone Pokemon, whether it be like Incin or Grimmsnarl. I think I like those a little bit more. Okay, and this is honestly not a bad team. You know, this could be like another Clover Bells rental right here, you know, when you really think about it. I'm not so sure about this last slot here, but I definitely like Incin. I'm sorry, I definitely like Amoonguss, Urshifu, and Iron Jugulus here. This last slot here, I'm going to play around a little bit. It's going to be like Grimmsnarl or Incin in my opinion. Maybe if I explore it a little bit more. But I do think this pairing could rise as we head more towards, you know, NAIC. Because I don't think the core is set in stone yet. You know, there's some ideas that you can do with it. Like you can do screens, you can do Tailwind, you can play it slow, you can play it fast, right? And then that'll alter the build a little bit. You might even just swap out some staples entirely, right? I could even see like Landorus coming onto a team like this, right? Just because of what you have here. And even technically something like Raging Bolt, right? Remember this core, like Raging Bolt, Amoonguss, Calyrex here, right? You get this Bolt Beam coverage going here. I could even see Raging Bolt coming onto somebody like this with Electro Web over here, you know, some kind of AV set if you want to run it like that. I can definitely see that. So it's up for grabs. I mean, we can definitely put out a rental, you know, just for people to try it. It's still going to be good. But as far as like, is this going to be like the best possible team? It still needs a little bit more testing, but there's ideas out there. And if you, the viewer, are willing to explore them, I just gave you a couple. But yeah, I do think something like this could rise a little bit more later on. It didn't have like super amazing results here. You know, you can browse through this. I think there's some here that you can find, you know, with Kyogre, but just not a whole lot. Like, yeah, you have this one from Liam. We got to see this from Portland previously. Like, there's the Rillaboom Amoonguss variants. This one is the Never Melt Ice Calyrex Ice Rider, and then the Life Orb Ursh. Yeah, we saw that before. But as far as like other Kyogre teams, you know, if besides like the Swordfish idea, you know, there's I guess there's this way, right, with like Tornadus here, or yeah, it's like more or less the same idea. Instead of the Iron Jugulis, you have the Tornadus over here. Okay, yeah, to each their own. I mean, it still works. I do miss that dark type coverage though still. But again, as long as you have like that Tailwind idea, it still works. Like again, 8-3, still like okay, right? And even this one, like this is, well, this doesn't really count. This is the Swordfish idea, but you can also play this again with Grimmsnarl along with the Tailwind mod, or this straight up defensive backbone, right? Again, Kyogre, second restricted, instant Amoonguss Grimmsnarl. You can definitely play that way. A little bit passive, okay, but it can still work when you think about it. Okay, here's that other one. I know this is, oh, okay, well, this is one is like Zamazenta stuff. Is there another Kyogre team that we missed here? Kyogre, Zamazenta all together. There was like another Calyrex Ice Rider team. That one's like standard Swordfish. I don't remember where it was. Yeah. Now we're just getting into like the Swordfish teams, but honestly, we'll see what happens with these two. I think there's room for exploration, but at least there's different ideas to try right now. All right, so now for some like other notable teams that you got to see make a little bit of a splash, you know, within this tour. I'll start here from the end, just because I did see like a lot of them here. How about Groudon? Okay, like you haven't really heard too much from Groudon. There was some cool Groudon teams from VR, but here's another one. Look at this. Groudon Miraidon, okay, with double fire type Instant and Ogerpon Heart Flame. Then you've got Whimsicott with Tailwind support, and then of course the Encore Disable Screamtail, okay, with Perish, by the way, okay, with Perish Song. So that's a build, okay. I don't think you'll see this team very often, but hey, day 2, you know, I respect it. AV Groudon with Rock Tomb, okay. Groudon's had some interesting ideas, you know, so far in Regulation I. It's a ground type, it's pretty good. Into Miraidon, Iron Hands, of course, but it just needs support against the Ice Rider stuff, and you have to hit a Precipice Blade, so just be aware of that. This one over here, look at this Miraidon team. This one is Miraidon Ho, but look at this. Iron Valiant, King Gambit, and then Landorus over here rather than like Ursaluna. So substitute Landorus, by the way. So another cool idea. You don't have to commit a restricted slot for Wide Guard because you got it here in the Iron Valiant, which has good synergy with Miraidon because of Court Drive and coaching here. How about this? Yeah, look, you can coach quite a few targets here. You can coach the Iron Hands. You can coach the King Gambit. You can coach the Ho-Oh, by the way. Ho has already like a pretty good special defense. Now you're beefing it even further with coaching, right? I explored this idea, you know, last year with like a single restricted when we had Urshifu coaching with something like this, or even like Mienshao. But now we get it here with Iron Valiant, okay? And then we have a King Gambit here. You don't see King Gambit at all right now just because Urshifu and other fighting types are just putting it out of the meta. But here we have a King Gambit reminding us that, hey, this is another dark type that can come in and pressure the Lunalas and the Shadow Riders a little bit. So I don't know how much King Gambit can rise in the meta, but that was a pretty cool team to see. There was a 6-3 drop here. I wonder why. I don't know the story behind this, but it was just pretty interesting to see because who knows, they probably could have gone far. This is the Screens Kyogreization Swordfish idea. You know, with instead of Tailwind, we're just going with a bulkier, slower build. This is substitute Zacian over here. So I guess that works out too. This one here is Lunala Zacian with Indeedee Expanding Force stuff. So a little bit more hyper offense, I guess, you know, with just Expanding Force, Indeedee Psychic Terrain, and then you have Tornado Zacian. And you almost want a Regidrago here somewhere, right? But there is no Regidrago. But here we've got Urshifu. Honestly, why can't we have Regidrago in this Urshifu slot? Tell me why, okay? Because I feel like you can get away with a lot here, but Urshifu is just such a good mon there, so I understand it. 7-4 for that duo. Again, you're not going to see too many Lunala Zacian teams there, so underrated for sure. You know, you get a notice in our books here. Here's another one, Calyrex Terapagos. That's not like the traditional build. This is like a little bit more hyper offense with Tornadus, Ursh, and an Iron Hands here. So we're gonna pinpoint that. So shout outs to Samuel for that. Then if we scroll up a little bit more, there's a couple of other squads I want to look at. Here's another Groudon team, right? Look at the 7-4, but Groudon Shadow Rider, okay, and then Whimsicott Indeedee, right? So terrain control, and then Lilligant with coaching. Okay, again, another Pokemon with coaching here, but we can beef up the Groudon here, who already has a special defense boost thanks to the Assault Vest. Now we're making it physically tough with coaching, and then of course you get colorful Sleep Powder plays. Chiyu, you know, of course loves the Sun Calyrex Shadow Rider team just because more damage in the sun makes the Shadow Rider do more damage. It's Spec Shadow Rider, so that's pretty cool. And then if we scroll up a little bit more, like we've already talked about some of these, like the Torterras, the Glamoras. Okay, I think there was like at least a couple more that I saw that were like kind of cool that we didn't really get to talk about too much. Okay, yeah, this one, right? Oh yeah, we actually did preview this one, right? With the Overcool and the Ho-Oh with Life 2 and Whirlwind. Okay, yes, Whirlwind, not Tailwind. Okay, this was a team, okay, with the Ogerpon Wellspring Mask. Like, I think this was like the most unique team of the tour, in my opinion. Just because it was so out there, like 8-3 with mons like that put together. Like, again, pretty cool creative team building there from Nikita. So shout outs to them. I think there was like one other one that I wanted to look at here that I kind of missed. Or actually that was it. Yeah, but anyway, maybe I'll find it later and then just, you know, redo a film take over there. But anyway, that was pretty it. So let me know what you thought of Bologna. And again, this was like the last regional before like NAIC. So we've had, you know, back-to-back weekends, you know, with like tons of tours. Okay, we got a lot of meta development. So now you got to take all this data that you've seen, you know, from the month of May, and then use that and construct something if you are going to NAIC, right? You're gonna have to do a little bit of testing, obviously, but there is still room for exploration. It's only the start of the second month of the format. Okay, so nothing really is set in stone right now. You're still getting duos coming in and getting like strong results, and you know, duos that got strong results previously, not so strong results the next week, right? And it's just going back and forth right now because there's lots of things that are viable, and you know, it's gonna take some time for the storm to settle. Okay, and that's okay, right? That's usually the case with a new format. People are trying different things, they're exploring different sets. Okay, Mind Lunala was the story in this tour, in my opinion, right? Just because of how prevalent it was and how unique of a dual terrain idea that you can run with Miraidon. No one would really consider that until like recent exploration, but with time, as I say, with time, you can definitely get a lot out of it, right? So, you know, we'll have to see what happens. But yeah, let me know what you thought of Bologna. But, you know, like I said, we're back to making, you know, full-time vids and whatnot. So stay tuned for more frequent vids as we used to do, you know, besides the month of May. Like I said, May was like a crazy month work-wise, but we're back, and, you know, it's good to be back. We'll get like more other types of vids going. We're gonna get our teams going. We need a little bit of help there just because I can't make so many Calyrex teams. Obviously, you know, I need to find people to be willing to, you know, dedicate their slots for the whole month to be able to host the team for me. So once we got those settled, we'll put out the rentals, and hopefully we can get that in, you know, by this week. So this way you can test things with teams that are like recent and up to the meta, right? Anyway, that's it for now, folks. We'll be back with another video in the next one, guys. Peace out and have a good one.